Hello, and welcome to the Five Core Life podcast with Will Moore, founder of More Momentum. If you have not already, please make sure to follow and subscribe to the podcast. That way you get notified when a new episode airs every week. On today's episode of the Five Core Life, host Will Moore sits down with Jake Kelfer in one of the best podcasts yet. Together, Will and Jake talk about what success means to them. Jake defines it as being able to do what he wants, when he wants, with whom he wants. Ultimately, it's all about freedom. Jake introduces the idea of pursuing your greatness and how important enjoying the journey is. A big part of enjoying your journey is gaining self-awareness. Also, Jake shares the story of his childhood best friend that started the MVMT watch company. From societal standards, his friend was a loser because he dropped out of college to valet cars. Despite society's definitions, his friend recently sold MVMT for $100 million. Jake stresses the importance of defining success for yourself, independent of what society tells you. Lastly, they cover the value of time. Jake shared the advice his dad gave him, which is the only shortcut for success is taking action now. So, are you ready to fire on all cylinders? If so, let's go. Everyone has the same 5 core areas of their life that ultimately determine how happy they'll be. Unfortunately, most of us have developed failure habits in each, and it's Will Moore's mission to help replace those with success habits to maximize momentum. After exiting his business for a combined 9-figure sum, Will learned it's not just about becoming an entrepreneur of your career, but an entrepreneur of the most important business you'll ever run, your life. And to crush it in your life requires firing on all cylinders in your 5 cores by continually taking action, building habits, and maintaining balance in each.
There he is.
Let's go. What's up, man? Come on,
man.
Dude, I'm doing good. I'm pumped to chat for a little bit. This is gonna be great.
I love the energy. See, so right, I don't know if you heard me. Right as I was introducing you. So there's 2 types of people in this world. There's action takers, and then there's really it's victims and owners. And if you're an owner, you're an action taker. You take life by the horns. You know it's all up to you, and you have this type of attitude that you have. And when you're a victim, it's a totally different vibe. It's low energy. It's, just playing defense. Life's out to get me. Poor me. There's nothing I can do about it. This life world sucks. And so it's good to see more people like you out there helping to create more owners out there. So why don't you tell us, Jake, a little bit about yourself? I know you're an amazing speaker. I know you've written lots of things. You speak on different topics, networking being a big part of that, which is something I'm huge on. I always tell people you can get so much further with networking than you ever could in 50 years of taking a class or school.
Oh, for sure.
And then actually doing and learning as you're going. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and these things?
Sure, man. So real quick, my name is Jake. For those of you that don't know me, and I'm pumped to be here. And I am a author. I've written 2 books: Elevate Beyond and Elevate Your Network. I started the Professional Basketball Combine, which has helped over 70 NBA draft prospects sign their first pro contract. I've traveled all over the world as a motivational speaker, and my ultimate mission in life is to help elevate people. That's like my word, to elevate people to achieve their true definition of success, whatever that looks like for them. So, you talk about a lot of great things, and I'm sure we'll dive into all these great things. But for me, it's about elevating people to that next level, whether it be in business and sports and in life, to get you to that place you always wanted to go.
Well, I love that. And, that's preaching, something that I also use that word success to me is such a tricky little word. And it's the perfect example to use. And what I'm trying to do, what you're trying to do in terms of saying, look, success is what is personal to everybody, right? It's not that tied to a specific dollar figure or a celebrity or whatever, like most people have started to associate, have associated with over the years. And most people have that connotation like, oh, I'm a success. That means I'm making a lot of money and, have power or whatever. And it's like, no, okay, yes, money is a part of it, as I talk about with my stuff. And I know you do as well. You got to have money. You got to be able to live. You've got needs, you've got wants, and that's fine. That's healthy. Good to have goals to go towards, but you don't want to get caught up in that, just wanting to be successful and wanting more money, fame, whatever, power, and forgetting about these other areas that we all know lead to success, like your relationships, your physical health, your giving back, your well-being, right? And so it's all personalized to everybody. In general, I like to think that everybody has pretty much these same 5 core areas, but in general, it is specific to each person. So why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about what is success to you? How did you define it early on, and how do you feel that you've gotten there?
Sure. So for me, success, the definition that I use for success right now is to have the freedom to do what I want, when I want, with who I want. So really, success I equate with freedom, right? And being able to make choices, to control my life, to be able to do things with the people that I want to do. Now, when I first started on my journey, like my dream after not making it to the NBA, what I thought success was for me when I was in college was to be a sports agent, to make a ton of money, to impact a ton of lives, to buy a house, to buy an island. Then once I have all of those things, to come back and start speaking, writing books, coaching people, helping people, inspiring people, doing those things. But I had it backwards. I thought you had to work, make money, and then give. But instead, you can give and be happy in the pursuit of that greatness, in the pursuit of the things that you want to acquire. And so, I think back as I learned about that, I think back to an example that I like to give, which is I grew up with a really close friend. And this friend, we were friends by birth. Our parents were best friends. Now, one of us really liked school. The other one didn't like school. One of us liked technology. One of us preferred basketball. One of us barely graduated high school. One of us went on to college. One of us dropped out of college and started valeting cars. One of us got a 4-year degree from USC. One of us went on to try to build businesses. The other one went on to try and build businesses. Okay. To us, neither was right and neither was wrong. We were just living our life, right? But to society, the person who went to college was destined for success. The person who dropped out and valeted cars was not destined for success, right? And that's what we think about when we see society and we define success. Here's the thing. The person that drops out of college and valeted cars, he ends up starting a company called Movement. Well, Movement sold for $100 million as the leading watch company for millennials and people across the globe. The other person is me in this story, and I've gone on to do some incredible things. So the question is, who gets to decide what success really means? And who do we allow to dictate what success looks like to us? And at the end of the day, we are the ones that get to decide what success means to us. We are the one that get to decide the journey we want to go on. We are the author of our own story. We are the main character in our own movie. And it's up to us to follow the path we want to go on and enjoy that journey in the pursuit of it.
I love that. Right. So it's kind of like, it doesn't matter how you get there. Right. And we're so focused. I talk about the broken system all the time, right. I mean, the schooling system itself, as much as I love teachers, and to me, it's like there's nobody more awesome and important in this world than teachers. The information that they're giving and what they're teaching, same things we've been teaching for 150, 200 years based on an industrial setup, an industrial system with factories and whatnot. And then the subjects you're teaching, not stuff like how to be a good friend, a good partner, how to set goals, relationships, how to be emotionally intelligent, all these things that are so important in living and being successful, and actually getting to that where that you feel great about yourself, you feel good about the world. I like your definition of success: doing what you want, where you want, and with who you want. And that's exactly right. It's freedom, and it's getting to that point, and it's very the system is set up. The chips are stacked against you there, right? So I love your two examples. With the one, it's like, look, I'm going to do it my way because this is how I want to do it. This is who I am. And everybody's built differently. Everybody's an individual. We're not all these cookie cutters. And then goes on. And then other people, if they just turn on the TV, they go, oh, that guy's really smart and successful, right? But then you look at how he got there and it contradicts what we know and what we think about it. It's very interesting.
For sure. And look, when we think of success, we think of title, fame, status, money, right? But we also know that some of the people that have everything that most people want to acquire are some of the most unhappy people in life. Now, I believe that we can have it all. I really believe you can make money. I believe you can have a great business. I believe you can have great relationships. I believe you can take good care of your body. I believe you can have it all. But there's so many people that don't believe that's possible. They think it's one or the other. If I ask you, do you want money or health? The answer to that is not either or. The answer to that is both. The answer to that is I'm going to go get both, and I'm going to do what I need to do to go make both of those things happen. And that's when it comes down to understanding what you really want in your life. Because once you define success independently, then you can remove the comparison from everybody else. You can remove the expectation that society has placed on you and rather focus on the expectation you place on yourself. You can remove the guilt of trying to be this slave to the entrepreneurial grind because you feel you have to work 18 hours to make money, and instead focus on the recovery, the rest, the health, the meditation, the other things that build the full person so that your performance levels can be increased. And so when you think about it in that sense, getting clear on that definition of success is so pivotal to understanding what you're capable of becoming and who you're capable of becoming.
I love that. Right. And, I love to see one thing that I've learned in all the people, all the books I've read, all the successful people I've talked to, researched, read about, and I put you in this category, is there's no one right way to do it. And, you've got to kind of figure out your own journey and what makes sense to you. At the same time, there are universal principles out there that apply to all of us. And, here's an example, like the physical health side of it. It's like, okay, that you want to be in good physical health. You know that everybody knows deep down that should be part of what we do. Yet, like you were saying, a lot of people say, oh, well, he's super successful because he has $100 million business, but he's 70 pounds overweight and is going to die in 10 years because he's running himself into the ground with stress and all these things. So, but then when you look at that, you say, okay, but what does that mean for this person? Right. And it's not the same. It's not going to the gym 5 days a week and getting on the treadmill and, all these things you were taught kind of growing up. It's, what do you like to do? Right. You got to reduce the friction on getting there. And so for me, I'm a basketball guy too. Always have been, love it. Played in high school, tore my ACL and meniscus last year. That was a tough one. I was out for 10, 11 months. But that was how and now I've recovered and am able to get that cardio, get that exercise, get my heart beating, right? My wife loves running. She goes for these long runs and she loves doing these classes and stuff. And that's her and she loves it and she gets excited and wants to do it. That's not me. Right. And so it's figure out what that is. And same with food. It's like, there's so many choices now. Like you don't have to be like, oh, well, I don't want to eat healthy or, I like this type of food. Like junk food, there's actually enough choices out there where you can get stuff that tastes just like almost as good as junk food, but it's actually good for you. And you just got to experiment and figure out, go to the grocery store, try different things. And it actually starts to eventually taste better than junk food. It might not quite taste as good at first. You're like, but when you do it, you start to see the results and you start to see the changes and how good you feel. Then it tastes way better than the junk food.
Oh, for sure, man. I have like stomach issues to the nth degree. So like I'm relating on this level right now so much because I went through a phase and it started when I was younger where then I stopped eating lactose and I stopped doing that. And I started, eating lactate ice cream. And I was like, and now I don't even know what real cheese or real ice cream tastes like. And I'm sure I'm missing out. And people are going to be like, Jake, cheese is so good. Ice cream is so good. But there's other alternatives that satisfy the craving that I'm trying to get. Right?
Like to you, right. You don't even, it doesn't even feel like you're missing out because you enjoy that taste just as much now, right?
100%. And that's the new normal for me. That's the taste that I like now. I don't realize and I don't have to worry about missing out on the great other things because I already get satisfaction from the new foods that I'm consuming. So like I get it on that level and just with everything else that we do in our life, it's so relatable to that concept.
Dude, totally. And it's like, and it all ties into these habits, right? And it's like getting into the habits. Like, so now you reached, by the way, what age were you when you became lactose intolerant? Was it young or was it older?
It was younger. It was my teenage years, early on, maybe even before my teenage years, because every time we'd go to dinner after a basketball game or a baseball game, I'd be spending, an hour in the bathroom and everyone else was like, where'd Kelf go? And it was like, and then I started to figure out what was the pattern. What was the reason that was causing these things? Because oftentimes we never even evaluate. We just see the problem. We're like, damn, like, what did I do 5 minutes before then? But in reality, it's what happened 20 minutes before that? What happened an hour before then? What happened the days leading up to it, right? And you have to reverse engineer because there's always going to be answers to solve these problems and get to the root of what we're trying to do.
Dude, I love it. Right. And like you're saying, tying back into the habits, it's like you recognized for you eating that dairy became a failure habit. That's not necessarily a failure habit for everybody, but for you, it was a failure habit, and you stepped back and you were able to identify it, and then you took the steps and you overcame it. And not only that, but the one that you replaced it with, the success habit you replaced it with, eating this what do you call it? Diet? Lactose free.
Lactose free diet. We'll keep it simple.
Sure. That just as good to you. It tastes just as great. You no longer have to sit in the bathroom for an hour after every meal. And I've met people similar, and they're stubborn. And it's funny. I'm not going to name any names with some of my friends and whatnot, but they're like, no, I refuse to give up cheese. I refuse, and it's just like, dude, just give it up so you don't have this miserable thing after. Like, they'll literally like sacrifice and suffer their body and know that they're going to get sick afterwards because they're like, I don't want to give it up. And it's just like, no, you can have that same experience. You just got to pivot and shift your thinking into a different type of habit, replace that other habit. Right. And that's just everything in life.
Well, and think about this too, right? Like let's put like an equation into the mix here. When you eat that cheese, if you love dairy, right? That cheese or that ice cream or that pizza, that's like a 10 out of 10 experience. Okay. Right. But then you have an excruciating stomach ache for 2 hours. Okay. That's a 1 out of 10 experience. All right. You're averaging now about a 5.5 or so, right? Middle of the road experience. Let's say you alternate to a different type of food, and that drops it down to a 7 out of 10. Okay, you get a 7 out of 10. But now that experience after is freeing up 2 hours to do your dream activity, to hang out with your dream friends, to watch your favorite movie, to do whatever the heck you want to do. That's a 9 out of 10 experience. Well, your average is now an 8 out of 10. I don't know about you, but I'm trying to live an 8 and above in my life and not a 5.5. My life is designed to be extraordinary, not mediocre. And that's what it is when it comes down to these things, is literally you can put values on these to determine what it is that you want to do and where you want to go.
I love that. I've never heard it put that way. Is that your system that you've created? Did you get that from somewhere? What is that?
To be honest, I've been toying around with the idea, but that was just the first time it's ever been released or debuted.
Yeah, well, let's talk after this, because I'm actually building a game. Like, I'm actually coming out with a line of products where it's basically everything is gamified.
Yeah.
And the whole point is when you level up in the game, you're leveling up in real life. So the idea is it's addictive, fun, silly, like nothing too serious. Like some of these habit apps, I don't know if you've ever experienced any. They're just very dry and it's boring. Sure. And it feels like homework. And so I'm actually coming up with a line of products with this type of stuff. And what you just said is an interesting twist to that, like kind of doing it in a point system. And it's right. It's like, your mind just needs to go, okay, eating this pizza is a 10. I love it, but it's a short-term reward, right? What's the long-term experience you're getting out of it? So you get a 10, then you get a 0 because you're in the bathroom for an hour or two. You feel crappy the rest of the night, right? And that's even longer negative. So some would argue that even goes more negative than 0, whatever. But then it averages out at best, right? It's a 5 out of 10, but it's like, okay, well, we need to say, okay, if you want your life to be an 8 or 10 and above, you need to choose the experiences and shift your habits into being 8 or 10 above habits. I love that.
Yeah, no, it's great. And like, I love the gamification process of life as well. Because as a basketball player, I'm programmed to be competitive and programmed to win. I love to win. And if I lose along the journey, that's fine, but I'm learning, right?
Right.
I don't consider it failure until it's like I'm done, right? But like when I think about like life, I equate it to an NBA season sometimes, right? And you have in an NBA season, the first seed out of 82 games is going to win 60 out of 82. They're going to have 22 losses. Okay, that's a great season. If you have 82 days or so, people tend to say your most personal transformations come within 90 days or less. So let's imagine we're equating that to a 90-day game plan. You have 82 games, right?
Right.
In those 82 games, if you can have 60 great days, winning 67, two-thirds of the time, you're still going to have 20 to 30 crappy days that aren't going to be excellent, that aren't going to be 10 out of 10s. Well, guess what? You're still one of the best players in the game. And if you have a lot of great days, you're going to be able to win the regular season. You're going to make the playoffs. And then you're going to level up your game in the playoffs, and you're going to show up because now the stakes are higher, and this is where you start to thrive. And as you continue to level up, eventually you're going to get to a place where you're the MVP of your own life, performing at elite levels across the board. And that, like, for me, it gets me just fired up because the potential of what you can unleash when you continuously level up yourself, setting goals, breaking down the action steps to getting them and continuing to enjoy that process, then your life is dynamite. And I think we all want a dynamite life because it goes back to the first thing we talked about. Success is freedom. And that's where it comes full circle, is once you start to have that kind of experiences.
I love that, man. I love that. And I love that you get the gamification stuff. You know, I tell people and they're all like, oh, that's a really, you know, I love that. And I love what you're doing. So I'm developing an app. And there's a few little, like, there's some kids board game versions, like, to help them with their habits early on and not yelling. And I've got 2 small ones. Do you have kids?
No kids. Single guy, 27, single right now.
Attaboy. Enjoy that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, dude, for me, like, to have a wife and kids is like the thing I'm looking forward to most in this journey. So, like, everything I do now and everything I'm building is for that lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, it's phenomenal. You know, it's one of these things. You're in your 20s and you're single and you're like, this is great, and it's hard to picture giving it up in a way, but at the same time, you know how great it can be if you see friends and family and whatnot, and how they, you know, their relationships and their kids are, and then once you do it, it's like the giving up is like nothing. You're like, oh, I can't believe I was concerned about that, and it becomes everything. But so yeah, and so like my kids, for instance, we're trying to change my 4.5-year-old. Of 14 months, so he's too young to really, you know, work on habits yet. But my 4.5-year-old, we just created this chart, and it's basically like, okay, these are the things we want to bring to his attention, to shine a big spotlight on, that are failure habits, things that he's doing that are causing unhappiness, friction, bad stuff for him and us, right? And then we give him a little star when he does the positive action, and then we take away a star when he does the negative side at. So for instance, yelling is something he's still learning to control his emotions. And, you know, he tends to, when he doesn't get something he wants, like all toddlers, you know, it's the tantrums, the yelling. And most parents just throw their arms up in the air and they say, oh, there's nothing we can do about it. And they deal with it in their own way. And a lot of times the way they deal with it ends up screwing up their kid for the long run, right? Versus, you know, I'm of the thought of trying to do it in a positive manner and again, gamifying it, something that he's into. So I showed him the chart actually just this morning. That's why this is a cool conversation. We just introduced it. And I was like, okay, this is how you do it. And when you get 5 stars, we're going to take you on an ice cream date. And that's his favorite thing, is ice cream. And we're going to go out, and we're going to me, you, and mommy and baby. We're going to get an ice cream. And he's like, oh, yeah, right? So now he has these lists of behaviors that we're trying to encourage. And it's the opposite of the spanking, scolding, you know, the negative reinforcement, which, you know, everybody's got different opinions. To me, I think that that's a slippery slope, and it can end up, like I was saying before, screwing up your kids permanently. And so to me, it's like, if you can do the same thing, but in a positive reinforcement manner. And then again, it's just getting him in that habit. So then he'll get to the point. The idea is he'll get to the point where he starts catching himself in these moments, like, oh shoot, I'm going to lose a star. I'm starting to have a tantrum. Oh, okay. Right. And it's not going to be overnight. It's the law of compounding. It's going to take a little while, but then once that habit's formed, the idea is like he gets that, and then that goes on for the rest of his life. Like he's learning emotional intelligence right here, right now.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And it's always interesting. I mean, I grew up, my mom, she was a clinical social worker. She was a graduate school professor of school of social work at USC, had her own practice. And she's a specialist in parenting and dealing with children with trauma and all these things. But she did such an incredible job with similar types of positive reinforcement things with me, understanding like these are the things that we do. It is how you become your own person. These are things we want to instill in you. I mean, and I'm very grateful because the lessons they taught me, my mom, my dad, have shaped me into the person I am. And I look at the way I've built my businesses and the leader and entrepreneur that I am, and I look and I see, okay, my mom, the love, empathy, and kindness really stems deep from understanding the connection from my mom and her work and her lessons, and the vulnerability and the authenticity. And then my dad He's an entrepreneur getting up. He's always gotten up early. I get up early. He's always been disciplined. He never missed a sporting event from the time I was 5 till the time I finished my last high school basketball game. He showed me what being a dad looks like. So when you combine that like absolute drive and ambition with that incredibly soft and nurturing vulnerability, well, I've started to come into my own and own that full personality. And it's becoming special. And I think back to what you're saying. It started with what were my parents doing with me when I was 3, 4, 5 years old, when they were telling me to do these things, when they were asking me to spell in the car, doing math problems, like building all the positive learning habits that eventually I'd have to own myself as I got older and went through school and sports and all of these things.
That's right. That's right. And right, it's like, it goes back to that system we were talking about earlier. And, unfortunately, who you get as your parents is a total crapshoot. Like, it sounds like you had pretty good parents. My parents were good in a lot of ways, but they had some failure habits in other ways, which led to stuff like me. Like I ended up having an anger problem that I had to deal with that stemmed from my mom, who developed it and got it from her grandfather and her father. And it was just like this pattern of like, this is how we interact. When we're mad, we yell. And it's like, no, like, but then there was also another, give them credit, a lot of other great habits that they instilled in me. And so that's the point. Like, it shouldn't be guessing. It shouldn't be just like, okay, well, depending on how this parent was raised, even if they have a bunch of failure habits, that's basically, you're going to be stuck in the failure loop because that's going to be passed to you. Then you're going to pass it to your kid and you're going to pass it. It should be like, no, these are universal principles. These are the things we know work. Let's tailor it to each person. But at least we know like these are the types of behaviors you want to do. And you want to start doing it as early on as possible, because habits, they don't care if they're good or bad, helping or hurting you, right? Once they're locked in and they're doing their thing, they're going to create who you are. So you want to start, the earlier you do it, the easier it is, because when it's a bad habit, failure habit, it digs in and it's extremely hard to remove, right? It's like this got its claws in you. It's not impossible, but it's harder. So it's like, why not start early with that positive momentum versus having to undo a bunch of stuff in young adulthood, like I feel like the majority of people do.
100%. I mean, I couldn't agree more with that. I mean, I was rereading James Clear's Atomic Habits this morning. Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg. I mean, those are two of my favorite like habit-based books. And like James Clear mentioned, there's a line that I love, is that you're not going to rise to the level of the goals you set. You're going to fall to the level of your systems. Okay. And your systems are the habits and things that you're constantly doing, because to be honest, I don't know the exact statistic, but almost half of your decisions in your day is already part of your routine. And so everything that you do is already predetermined in that sense of you've built that routine. When you wake up, you do the same thing over and over again without even thinking about it. That's what a habit is. It becomes ingrained in your mind. So it's really, really powerful to focus on the positive habits, focusing on the environment that you're surrounding yourself, focusing on the people that you're hanging out with. Because, when we talk about relationship building and networking, customer acquisition, and all these things in business, right? Or in life, in your relationships, is like, I think of parents with kids. I think of coaches with athletes. I think of coaches with entrepreneurs. I think of all these people that have influence over somebody. And the biggest thing that other person needs is just to know that you're there for them. Right? To know that you're there to support them and guide them in the positive direction. Because most people look at a parent, most people look at as a coach, look at as a mentor, as someone who can take them from where they're at and close the gap to where they want to go. Hence, typically why you have a coach, or you invest in yourself, or go to a conference, or read books, right? It's so that you can close the gap from everything that you desire. And when it all comes back to it, though, relationships, everything comes down to the little moments that you do repeatedly over time. Right? And those moments create the personality that you have, the identity that you create and become, and all of those other things.
That's right. That's exactly right. Right. My equation of life ties it all together. It's kind of what you said. It's picked up from a bunch of different people. And the way I see it is your belief system plus your repeated actions plus time equals who you will become. Right. It's what's going on with your mindset. What is that overall? Is the glass half empty? Is it half full? Are you an owner or are you a victim? Right. And you got to start switching that, like you were saying with your mom early on, and stopping bad habits. My mom used a rubber band, is how she did, it's the positive thinking. She said, when you have a bad thought, snap the rubber band, which is something that I'm incorporating into an app idea that I have. And so it's like you've got to, you stop that in its tracks, and you start to slowly change. And again, it's plus your repeated actions. So you got to commit to yourself and actually do them. And then plus time. It's not going to happen overnight, but that's who you will become. And it's the law of compounding. And the law of compounding is one of these universal truths I was telling you earlier about. You can't cheat the system. You can't work around it. It is what it is. It's there. It's whether it's finances, whether it's your life, it's going to play itself out.
Yeah, and time is one of the most beautiful things in the world. Like we can never, I feel like no one could ever fully understand time. But the only thing that we do know is that time is the only thing you'll never get back in your life. It's the only resource you can't get more of. Right.
That's exactly right.
And so it's such a powerful thing. And like, as I've grown, you know, I've always known time was important, right? Because when you think of money, right, the earlier you invest, you add time, it compounds, you become a millionaire. Like if you follow the pattern, it works. Like it just, that's factual. And in life, in your relationships, it's the same thing. The earlier you start, the more you do, plus the amount of time, multiplied by the amount of time that you put in it, it continues to grow. And so time is one of those things that like I've really become aware of. And I really encourage people to understand, like, do an evaluation of how do you spend your time on a day-to-day basis, right? Like you think I bet you anyone who's listening to this or anyone who watches this, if they were to look at their screen time on their phone, they would have exponentially more time using their phone than they think they do on a given day. Like I thought I barely used my phone. I was using social media for like 2.5 hours a day. And I was like, oh my gosh. 2.5 hours a day. Do you realize how much that time you can get back if you were to cut that by 10 minutes a day? Just 10 minutes a day. I mean, I'll give you the math. 10
that
minutes
book
a day,
that you don't have time to read, right? That 10 minutes of the book that you don't have time to read. There it is right there.
Well, right. Like let's literally do it, right? 10 minutes a day, 6 days a week. Give yourself Sunday to do whatever you want to do. That's an extra hour a week. That's 50 hours a week. We know on average it takes about 5 hours to consume a book. That's an extra 10 books a year that you're doing just by lowering your social media and take like 10 minutes a day or by waking up 10 minutes earlier. The possibilities are endless when you start to think about how do you choose to spend your time and how do you value your time, because then as you get to the next level in your life, in your business, in your life or whatever, you start to then pay for things to get your time back, right? And this happens as you grow, especially as you start to achieve more financial success. Then you start to say, well, you know what? I can spend an hour cooking a meal, but I don't really like to cook, or I can pay for it and it's a little bit more money, but I get the time back and I get potentially even better food, right? And you go back to the equation we talked about, is cooking minus an hour, right? What does that equate to on your average out of 10 scale versus ordering in and spending that money that you may not want to, but gives you back that time? What does that equate to, right? And so time is such a powerful concept. The only thing I know about time is I can't get it back. And I got to enjoy as much of it as possible.
Yeah, it's so true. Have you seen that movie Out of Time with Justin Timberlake?
Oh, dude, love that movie. Love that movie, man.
I just saw. So I'm a big movie guy. I think I saw on your bio and you're filling out you like Netflix too. So it's one of my. I don't even call it guilty pleasures. I'm not ashamed. You know, like a lot of these in the personal development world, these oh, you got to get up. Again, it's different for everybody. Like, I don't know. I don't need to get up at 5 a.m. and work out. I'm more of I get up a little bit later and I have energy later. And a lot of times I get stuff done during the night for the first half of the night. And then I just look forward to just guilt-free, just laying down and watching whatever the show is or the movie that, I really enjoy movies. I always have. I have a passion for them. So anyways, that's a little bit of a side thing. So if you watch movies and you watch TV, it's okay. Just, again, it's balancing. It's keeping track. Like, are you watching 8 hours of television a day or is it, 1 to 2? So, but yeah, that movie Out of Time, I just rewatched it the other day and I just thought it was so cool because I hadn't seen it in a while. I love my man, JT, Justin Timberlake, right? One of his only movies he did. I thought he did a great job in it, but talked about what you just said, time as a commodity, right? In the future, like time is basically, instead of money, it's time, and everybody they get it added when they do work or whether they gamble, whatever it is, just like money, it gets added to their lifespan. And when their time runs out, they literally just die. Like, that's it. Their clock is up. And I thought that was a cool way. It ties into what you were just saying to think about life. Like, that's really is the currency when you think about it, right? Because you take an 80-year-old guy that's got $5 billion and you tell him, if you give up every cent of money you have, would you give up every cent of money you have right now to go back to when you were 20, I guarantee you 100 out of 100 people will say not, they won't even think about it, right? And if that doesn't show you how time is money, I don't know what does. Because at the end of the day, you only have this one life to live. And again, it ties to what we started the conversation with, which is like, what is success to you? And if you're just chasing the wrong things and you get to the end and you've got all this money, but you haven't developed good relationships, you're in shitty physics, crappy physical health, and you haven't given back, and you have this feeling in your soul, like, I know that I've just taken, and your legacy is going to be that he took more than he gave. It's not going to be this person was a good person and contributed to the world. You're not going to be successful. You're not going to feel good, and you're going to want to do over. But so maybe, I don't know, maybe I take that back. Maybe there are going to be some people that say at 80, you know what? If they do live the 5-core life, fire on all cylinders and do all these things we're talking about, maybe they do say, you know what? I lived a darn good life. I'm good. Maybe there are some of those, but I guarantee if they didn't and they get offered that choice, they'd take the going back to 20 any day.
Yeah. And you look at, what are the people's biggest regrets? It's not going after the things they want. It's waiting too long to tell someone you love them. It's all of the things that regrets happen by not utilizing the time in the present moment, because the fear of rejection stops you from taking that action. And that fear is valid. That fear is real. But here's the thing. We all have that fear, right? We all face it. It just matters of what do you do when that fear happens? Do you use that to create action, or do you use that to create inaction?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And if you use it to create inaction, that'll turn into a regret. And if you use it to take action, it'll turn into the greatest potential experience of your life, or a learning moment. Hence why you win or you learn, but you don't quit, right? You don't lose, right? And so that's like something that's really powerful for everyone that's tuning in, or for us to just have this discussion. It's always good to remind ourselves. And I remind myself of that all the time, and then to even go one step further is like, I lost a really good friend in the first week, like my welcome week of college. One of my really good friends had passed away after a 4-year battle with Hodgkin's lymphoma. All good. And when that happened, it was like the craziest thing ever. But what I realized from that is like, we can't keep waiting to be happy and waiting for things to finally go our way, waiting for us to acquire the certain wealth, waiting for us to reach a certain status, for us to start actually living our life. Because guess what? He didn't have all of the money at this point in his life yet. He was a high school student getting ready to go to college. But what he did have the chance to do was to enjoy every moment. And when he was fighting for his life with cancer, he started smiling, he started enjoying, and we all became happier because of that. And I think about him every single day. The color of my book is neon green because that was his favorite color. There's 25 Kelf keys in my second book because his favorite number was 25. There are things in our life that are more important than acquiring status, fame, success, wealth. The key to winning a life is to enjoy the process in the pursuit of greatness.
Well said. That was really well said. Did you rehearse that? Because it sounded like that was all.
I know you didn't. The concepts multiple times, but we're in the flow, man. We're just
we're definitely
right
flowing.
Now, so I'm feeling
it. We're definitely we're 100% on the same page. I love that. Right. It's the definition of happiness. Success and happiness to me they're pretty interchangeable. And it's the whole, what are you doing every day? Like, as you were saying earlier, like on the journey versus just that whole, okay, well, if I just do this and I sacrifice and I'm going to put all these things aside that I know are good and going to make me happy now, I'll sit on that beach and have that pina colada at the end and it'll be all great. Right. But we know 100% that that's not how it works. And you got to enjoy the journey. And my hat's off to you as somebody that's out there and you combine your passion with the business side, right? So you're out there, like you said earlier, you don't have to choose. You don't have to like wait until the very end and do anything you can to make money. You can actually combine the two, and it's figuring out what it is you're passionate about, what are your strengths, and then getting it going. And then just like you said, just taking action, falling on your face, failing forward. Nobody, you read some of these books you read, they talk about like, you need to welcome failure and all this. And it's like, I get that, but I think the reality of it, nobody likes failing. And I don't want to lie. We don't want to lie to people and say, failing feels good, but how you view that failure, as far as like what you were saying earlier, like using it as something, fear and failure kind of also are interchangeable, something to stop you, to freeze you, and then you'll have regrets moving forward versus using it as a motivator, being like, okay, I now recognize, and again, that's just a habit like anything else. Okay, I recognize this failure, this fear just happened, and it's time for me to decide to take that action or not. And if it becomes like, okay, what did I learn from this? How am I going to not do it moving forward? And then just keep pivoting. And the best, most successful people that have ever lived, you know, happy, whatever definition you want to call it, they all just took action and then pivoted on the way, right? They didn't just wait for everything to be perfect, and they didn't let fear and failure freeze them.
Oh, 100%, man. My dad told me this quote. I was getting ready to release my first book, and this was one of those moments that, you know, I'm gonna remember for the rest of my life. I'm getting ready to write my first book. I'm getting ready to launch it. Now, when I first launched my first book, I had no email list, not a huge following. I had no clue what I was doing, right? I was just 23, and I was like, I'm putting out a book, and I'm going to try to make it a bestseller, because why not? Like, let's go big or let's go home. And I'm sitting around, and I have all the doubts that everyone ever has when they're starting. What if no one reads it? What if I put in all this time and people criticize me for it? What if I do this and it just sucks? Like, all these things. And my dad sits around and he goes, Jake, everybody wants this shortcut. Everybody wants a shortcut to success, to wealth, to fame, to writing a bestseller. Everyone wants to end up there. He said, but here's the truth. There is no shortcut.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, Dad, that makes sense. Like we're vibing right now. And me and my dad, we go back and forth. And then my dad looks at me and he says, okay, you know what? I lied. There is one shortcut. And now I'm like, whoa, you just said there's no shortcut. Now you're telling me there is a shortcut. Make up your mind. And he goes, the only shortcut in life is to start now. And I was like, boom, there it is. And that was the moment where I was like, this is everything. Because the moment you start, you can start to make that incremental progress. And that 1% over the course of a year gets you 37 times better than when you started. 1% in the wrong direction gets you almost to a flat line of zero. The difference between starting now and saying, oh, I have this $1 million idea and getting there, versus waiting 5 years and saying, oh, I had this $1 million idea, but I had it before them, but someone else actually executed on. That's the difference from when you start now. And so that is the shortcut.
Yeah.
That is the shortcut. And I think back to everything that I've ever done. Whenever I'm most uncomfortable, whenever I have the doubts, whenever I have the greatest ambition, is when I go for it. Because you never know what's going to happen until you actually take the action. And more often than not, you'll end up at a result different than what you initially intended for or set out to, but it will be a better result and the result that was supposed to happen for you at that given time. And so that was like, for me, a huge eye-opener when my dad said that. And it parlayed into me starting a speaking business, to grow my combine. And like now, 5 years later from that conversation, I've traveled the world and I've done all these incredible things. But I go back to that moment when someone says, what do I need to do? I say, you just need to start. There's no perfect time. You're never going to be ready. You're always going to have doubts. But guess what? We're all going to have those. It's what you do in the face of that. It's what you do when you can't control things. It's what you do when you want to achieve something.
That's 100. So have you read the book? I think it's Good to Great that talks about, is it Good to Great, or is it, I might be confusing with one, but maybe it's the Lean Startup. But basically, that's the whole concept of basically, and then you know, this wasn't the only book to do it, but this is the one that resonated with me, which is basically just do it and experiment and pivot, right? Instead of like having to wait for everything to be perfect and letting fear freeze you and failure, you know, just start moving forward. And like you said, just that action itself, like you're going to grow and you're going to learn. And as long as you just keep putting one foot in front of the other, it goes back to our compounding, like, right? Like 1% a day, what does that equal up to? If you do it every single day.
Yeah.
And if you're working on these certain areas in your life, like, and then again, it's not just business, but like physical. Like if you just are in the habit of just not exercising at all, it's going to seem totally overwhelming, and nobody's going to want to be like, I'm not going to the gym 3 to 5 days a week, right? But it's like, okay, just start with like 10 push-ups, you know, twice a week, right? And then just you start super small, and it's like that, just that little 1%. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well now I want to, then you start wanting to, you start craving, you activate the why, as Simon Sinek, says, activating that why in you. And it's like, okay, ooh, now I really, now I get it. It's like, ooh, you look forward to doing those push-ups, and then it's 15, and then it's 20, and all of a sudden you're doing 50, and you start to see these results. And then it becomes even more, you get more energy and passion and momentum going. And you're like, hell yeah, now I'm in my success loop and I want to keep it going. And then that's when things really start to have the compounding effect kicks in and things get exciting.
For sure.
Cool, man. Well, we're actually right at our time spot. This was awesome. I like to end. This was a really good conversation. Actually, do me a favor. Just text, send me, or I think I have your number. I'm going to reach out to you. I want to talk to you about some of this gamified stuff. I'm thinking there might be some synergy with that, but let me end with this for the viewers. What is the one habit that you feel like you have developed in your life that has been a game changer in terms of your momentum and quote unquote success and happiness?
Damn, the one habit. Woohoo! Man,
yeah, putting you on the spot. It's fun, isn't it?
I'm gonna go with gratitude. And I have a morning routine, but gratitude, if you're talking about a singular thing that I do every single day, gratitude has taken me from when I started my business and I compared myself to what other people were doing, what I thought success needed to look like. Gratitude put me in the present moment more frequently. It was something that, to be honest, I didn't like mock it per se, but I was never the person who was going to go on a gratitude walk and appreciate, a walk in nature. But now I've come to realize that gratitude is one of the big reasons that's allowed me to remove comparison, focus on healthy competition, and also be able to see an abundance lifestyle. So that's the habit I'll go with for today on this chat that has played a big role in
It's
my
a
life.
loaded question, right? Because obviously, as a successful person, there's many habits that you would have had to develop to get to where you are. And so, the part of this, as I said, my whole thing is habits and switching your life through them and using that equation of life, which centers around habits and time and changing who you are. So I always like to kind of see what pops into your mind first. And gratitude for my guest. That's a great one. Honestly, Jeff, it's I have a routine as well. And I have my mantra that I say to myself every single morning. And at the very end of it, I put what I'm grateful for. And just to expand on what you're saying, when you focus on what you're grateful for, it has this magical effect in reminding you of the big picture, because it's so easy as humans to get that low hanging fruit for being that victim and being like, oh, this sucks, or, this isn't fair, and life's this and life's that, or this person did this. But if you remind yourself every morning of the great things that you have going and the big picture, it just helps to dissolve those things away. Right. And you just focus on these are the great things. And not only are they great, but I'm getting greater every day, and I'm going to have even more great things in my life. So 100%. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for being with us today. Like I said, I'm going to reach out to you because I think we got some synergy on some things. And have a good one, bro. This was awesome.
Yeah, man. Hit me up. This was a great chat. And shout out to all the listeners for all the great comments. I mean, they were giving you some big compliments. So that's always great to see. But yeah, we'll do it again, and then we'll stay in touch for sure. I'll look for your text.
Sounds good, buddy. All right.
Man.
Take care,
Peace.
man.
That's it for the 5 Core Life podcast with Will Moore. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. If you have not already, please make sure to follow and subscribe to the podcast so that you get notified when an episode drops every week. If you haven't joined the 5 Core Life Facebook group yet, I encourage you to also join that and see what all the fuss is about. There's some really great, awesome content there designed to get your momentum going, including a monthly giveaway where you can win a complimentary coaching call with the Will Moore himself. The Facebook group is currently the only place to get Will's dedicated attention and support on your 5 Core journey. If you're feeling stuck or just want someone to cheer you on, that's the place that you need to be. There's nothing like a community of people on the same journey to get you fired up, kicking butt, and taking names. So come join us.
Well, get moving, gain momentum, join the movement. Join Emmett by going to moremomentum.com to take a free life evaluator quiz on where you currently stand in each of your 5 cores.